Who exactly are you, Robert? Please, be honest with me. Emily asked me with a serious look, watching me as I smoothly served our foreign customers. I realized I couldn't hide the truth from her any longer. My name is Robert. I'm a man in my late 50s. I work as a server at a cafe near a tourist spot. The cafe is popular with locals for its classic sweets like cakes and cookies, paired with a wide variety of authentic coffee. However, the tasks I'm given are always simple ones. That's because the manager, Aiden, thinks I'm incompetent and only assigns me menial jobs. So, I spend my time disposing of old files or cleaning outside the shop, feeling like a student part-timer. In fact, these days even students don't do such simple tasks. Other staff, after just 6 months, are trusted with ordering supplies or doing simple cooking in the kitchen. But Aiden treats me like a chore boy, giving me only boring tasks. Hey, there are leaves piling up outside the shop. Go clean them up right away. Got it. Don't dawdle. Get it done efficiently. Though, you might struggle with that. After all, you're so useless that you can't do better than being a cafe worker in your late 50s. Whenever Aiden sees me, he picks a fight. And he orders me to do things that don't require immediate attention. Since these tasks are quickly done, I often find myself bored. I work at a cafe, so I wanted to do more fulfilling and enjoyable tasks. I think I'm passionate about my work, but I'm not good at asserting myself, so I can't stand up to Aiden or the other staff. There's a reason why I became so timid. When I was in elementary school, a foreign family lives nearby. I used to play with their younger child, but while the parents spoke broken English, the child spoke none. Instead, he talked to me in French. Wanting to communicate with my little friend, I worked hard to learn French. Though they moved away before I started middle school, the fond memories stayed with me. In middle school, I began learning French formally. Remembering my childhood, I tried hard to pronounce French correctly. The other kids were all just reading aloud with sloppy pronunciation. So it probably annoyed my classmates that I was trying to get closer to the real pronunciation, making me seem strange. For 3 years, I endured being teased for my weird French. In the 3rd year, we had to participate in a French speech contest for visitors, and my classmates nominated me to mock me. I was completely taken aback. I think Robert should do the French speech. He studies English every day, so he'll give a great speech. Wait a minute, I don't want to. I tried to protest, but everyone agreed, and I ended up participating in the contest. On the day of the contest, I was so nervous I couldn't remember the faces of the guests in the front row. Somehow, I finished the speech and even received applause from the guests. However, I wasn't studying French to stand out, so I felt incredibly embarrassed. This experience made me dislike drawing attention to myself. Because of this, during my school years, I thought it was better to endure quietly rather than complain and stand out. One day, a woman came to our cafe from out of town. Her name was Emily, and she was going to be our new manager. It was lucky enough for me that the strict previous manager was being transferred, but Emily turned out to be a kind person. Emily was in her 30s, about 5 feet 5 inches, and wore heeled shoes. Her tall and slender figure made her stand out in the cafe, giving her a refreshing presence. With her large, sharp eyes and fair complexion, she was strikingly beautiful. I was worried that her appearance might mean she had a strict personality, but I found out she was actually very kind to me. Robert, could you translate the new menu starting next week into French and create a French menu? Are you sure you want me to do it? Yes. I was going to ask Grace, but she's too busy right now. Oh, I don't mean you looked idle, please don't take it the wrong way. No, I don't mind. I'm just an insignificant employee, but if you think I can do it, I'll give it a try. You're not insignificant at all. Thank you, I'm counting on you. Emily gave me this task, and I was thrilled to finally do a meaningful job. Thanks to my hard work, I created a French menu that clearly showed the dish names, descriptions, and prices. Emily, I'm finished. Is this okay? Wow, that was quick. Thank you, it looks great. The balance between the photos and the French text is perfect. This will be easy for our international customers to understand. Receiving praise for the menu I made me happy for the rest of the day. Because of this, I started to develop a bit of a crush on Emily. Emily had graduated from a prestigious private university in the city and joined a coffee shop chain. She quickly moved from store to store across the country and became a manager in record time, bringing a wealth of knowledge and experience. Additionally, her beauty and kindness attracted many admirers. However, Emily gracefully turned down all advances with a smile. She would take the train straight home after work. By coincidence, we got off at the same station, so we often chatted on the way home. Though it was purely coincidental, those brief moments with her made me happy. One day, after the lunch rush and once the morning staff had left, I was doing inventory as usual. As I was trying to finish my tasks, Emily suddenly called me from the cafe floor. "There are foreign customers here. Can you help serve them?" "Me? Are you sure?" "Yes. It's a slow time, but suddenly a group of 30 people came in, and we can't keep up. Just take their orders, please." Seeing the situation, I was surprised to find 30 customers of various nationalities. Apparently, they were part of a training group from a nearby company, speaking multiple languages, not just French. Emily was trying to handle them in French, but she couldn't keep up with their fast-paced speech. The foreign customers, growing impatient, began to frown. Some shrugged in exasperation and started wandering around the shop. Since it's a cafe, the interior is decorated with traditional toys from around the country and replicas of famous paintings. Thinking they were for sale, the customers would pick them up or start playing with them on their own. "Please wait, we'll guide you to your tables shortly." "Wait, please." Emily desperately tried to stop them but couldn't make herself understood. I quickly stepped out into the shop. "Sorry to keep you waiting. We'll guide you to your tables shortly." Speaking to a customer admiring a Barbie doll, I guided them to a nearby table. One by one, I seated the customers from various countries. Calmed by the communication, the foreign customers settled down and took their seats. Once all 30 were seated, I returned to Emily. "Emily, let's start by serving everyone water." But Emily looked at me, wide-eyed, as if she were seeing me for the first time. She stared at me for a while before finally speaking. "Who are you? How were you able to guide all the customers?" It was understandable that Emily was surprised. The truth was, I guided the customers not only in French but also in Spanish, Italian, Chinese, and Korean. Smoothly switching languages to suit each one. I'll explain later. For now, let's focus on serving our customers. With that, I went to distribute water to the tables. Emily watched as I chatted lightly with the customers while setting down their glasses. Her eyes were still wide, probably wondering how an incompetent employee like me could speak so many languages. In the end, we served the customers their desired dishes and drinks, and they left highly satisfied. Several of them even complimented our excellent service as they left. After seeing off the last customer and tidying up the tables, the cafe finally returned to its usual calm. Emily, who had been diligently working, approached me with questions. "Robert, you're really impressive. You said you were insignificant, but today you didn't seem like that at all. Do you have an extraordinary background?" "Well, no, not really. Come on, aren't you an elite? You must have a far more impressive history than just being a cafe manager like me." "Robert, who are you? Please, be honest." Emily asked me seriously. I realized I couldn't keep anything from her any longer. "I studied foreign languages in college, actually." "I thought so. Which college, if you don't mind me asking?" She probably asked out of simple curiosity. I had no reason to lie, so I answered truthfully. "East City University of Foreign Studies. I have DELF C1. C1? Yes. Besides French, I also studied Spanish, Chinese, and Korean. I have business-level proficiency in each." Emily gasped in surprise at my words. "Wow, having certifications in so many languages besides French. That's incredible, Robert. And earlier, you were speaking even more languages. Right? Well, it's true. I learned during my French studies that many Spanish people prefer their own language, so I studied Spanish to communicate better. In the process, I also picked up Italian because it's similar to Spanish." "Why so many languages?" It seems she believed my story was true. She leaned in closer, clearly interested. Speaking someone's native language builds trust. It feels rewarding. So, what about Chinese and Korean? Since they're big countries, and Korean has a similar structure to Chinese, I found them useful for business. I enjoy mimicking the unique sounds of different languages. Although I was mocked for it in middle school. Emily looked at me with shining eyes. Amazing, Robert. Why did you ever call yourself insignificant? I'm not that great. After learning various languages in college, I studied abroad and eventually found a job. You've worked hard for many years, Emily, which is far more commendable. But I don't have special skills like you. Did you use your language skills in your job after studying abroad? Yes. I worked as a multilingual interpreter. It was nerve-wracking because any mistake could result in millions in losses. Emily's eyes sparkled as she listened. Then she smiled warmly. Thank you for helping earlier. I was panicking with all those different languages at once. It was nothing. I couldn't take pride in my language skills for a reason. As I mentioned, interpreting is very stressful. If the meaning of words is misunderstood, there's a risk of damaging the relationship with the other company. That's why I continued studying every day even after I started working, leading a tense life. My job became all-consuming, and I neglected my ailing mother, who lived with me. My mother, who had always been frail, apparently hesitated to tell me when she felt unwell. I received a call from the States informing me that she had passed away while I was on a business trip abroad. I couldn't forgive myself for not noticing her condition. After my mother passed away, I quit my job and moved to a place where no one knew me. I wanted to work quietly for myself, which led me to this cafe in the countryside. Initially, I hated the foreign languages that led to losing my mother and didn't want to speak them anymore. But today, seeing Emily in trouble, I couldn't help but step in. Emily listened attentively without interrupting. I wanted to help because you've always been kind to me, Emily. After hearing my long story, Emily had tears in her eyes. Oh, this person is crying for me. Thinking that, I felt a warm surge in my chest, grateful for Emily's kindness. Robert, you're such a kind person. You're too kind, which is why you blamed yourself and quit your job as an interpreter. But you don't have to give up your love for foreign languages because of your regrets. That love is a precious part of you. Emily. Her kind words and genuine compassion moved me deeply. I wanted to repay her kindness someday. Unexpectedly, that chance came soon. The next morning, we received a phone call. The company that organized the group tour from the previous day was so impressed with my service that they wanted to include our cafe in their future tours. We also received offers from nearby tourist facilities to collaborate, and our cafe began working with travel agencies. We did it. It's all thanks to you, Robert. It's not just my efforts. It's because the entire cafe staff provides heartfelt service that the customers were so pleased. With regular tour groups from overseas, we became very busy. Our cafe gained a reputation as a hidden gem in the States, attracting many individual inquiries as well. We'll need to hire more staff with all these customers. Headquarters has decided to expand the number of locations. It's really thanks to you, Robert. We couldn't keep up with just me handling translations, so we hired staff proficient in various languages. This increased our customer base, boosting the entire cafe chain's performance, and there were plans to open a branch overseas next year. As a manager of the flagship store with skyrocketing sales, Emily was frequently attending meetings and giving lectures at headquarters. I also started attending various meetings with her. One day, I joined Emily for a manager's meeting. While reviewing the materials before the meeting, I heard a familiar voice. Robert? What is an incompetent employee like you doing here? Only managers can attend this meeting. And it's for top managers personally invited by President Anderson. Aiden, it's been a while. It was Aiden, the former manager who always belittled me. He stared at me before speaking again. I heard your cafe has suddenly become successful, attracting foreign customers. What kind of underhanded tactics did you use? I didn't use any tricks. I just talked to the foreign customers. You? Aiden never expected that I could speak foreign languages. He looked at me in disbelief, eyes wide. So, you're saying you're the one driving the sales increase? That's a lie. An incompetent like you can't even understand French. Stop lying and leave this manager's meeting. No, it's true I speak foreign languages. And I'm not leaving. Today, they're announcing my promotion to manager. I'll be in charge of our first overseas branch, the flagship store for our global expansion. Hearing this, Aiden was speechless. The man who had mocked me as incompetent and given me menial tasks was furious that I had been selected as the manager of an important overseas branch. When my promotion was officially announced during the meeting, Aiden turned red and clenched his fists. I thought I'd be chosen for the overseas branch. How could they pick Robert? Aiden glared at me, but then President Anderson's words made him freeze. And Aiden, I've heard bad reports about you from multiple sources. You've been abusing your position as manager. Giving unreasonable tasks to employees. No, that's not true. We've investigated. We've spoken to those involved. You need to cool off. Apparently, Aiden had been treating other employees poorly, just as he had done to me. Some new hires had never even been allowed to work on the floor and had collectively reported his mistreatment to headquarters. Aiden desperately tried to make excuses, but President Anderson demoted him to a regular employee and imposed a salary reduction for a year, causing Aiden to sink to his knees in despair. Before my transfer overseas, Emily invited me to a bar. It had been a long time since I went out drinking with a woman, and I entered the bar nervously. Emily, who seemed to hold her liquor well, ordered several refills, while I was just trying to keep my cool. My heart pounding at the thought of drinking with such a wonderful person. Suddenly, Emily placed her hand over mine. I've liked you for a long time, Robert. I'm sorry for saying this so suddenly. You might not have noticed, but I always took the train home on time because I wanted to be with you. Really? I was completely surprised and couldn't help but express my honest feelings. So, while I want to support your move to the overseas branch, I also feel sad. I don't want to be apart from someone I love. Well, I feel the same way. I've always thought you were wonderful, Emily. Her hand was warm and soft, possibly due to the alcohol. And I, too, was probably a bit tipsy. I ended up saying something akin to a proposal. Then, why don't you come with me? What? We were looking for an experienced manager to help run the overseas branch with me. I think we could support each other both at work and in our personal lives. Though I felt embarrassed about proposing without even dating, Emily smiled gently and said, "Yes, I'd be delighted." I was overwhelmed with happiness. We started dating with the intention of getting married. Having worked together for years, we knew each other well. Eventually, we decided to get married before moving overseas. On our wedding day, I was mesmerized by Emily in her wedding dress. When she smiled and said, "I look forward to our life together. I love you," I felt like the happiest man in the world. We have since enjoyed a blissful marriage and are busy managing and running the overseas branch. Meeting Emily was the luckiest event of my life. Without her, I wouldn't be who I am today. We will continue to support and encourage each other, living a fulfilling life together. When I went to UK, I told Emily not to wait for me. I thought she wouldn't be happy waiting for me, especially since I didn't know when I could come back. Emily stood by me and said, "I wanted to go with you, Michael, but I couldn't leave my sick mother behind. She passed away, but I had no way to follow you. I always believed we would meet again someday, and before I knew it, here we are." So that's how it was. Emily had been waiting for me all this time. I held Emily tightly in my arms. My name is Michael. I'm turning 39 this year. I've finished my overseas assignment and returned to the headquarters. The headquarters is where I worked tirelessly when I was young. I felt nostalgic about the familiar workplace. After 12 years, there are few employees I know anymore. It's only natural when you think about it. Time moves on. I gave a brief introduction at the morning meeting on my first day back. It felt a bit embarrassing to introduce myself again. I was welcomed with applause. I was immediately called upon for work. It was about a new client we had signed a contract with. They wanted to discuss the contract details. As a manager, I also attended the consultation about the contract. I appreciated the subordinate who secured the contract and wanted to support their discussion. I understood that a manager's role is to oversee the employee's work, appreciate their efforts, and sometimes offer support. It was different from just securing contracts. In that sense, I felt a fresh sense of purpose. When I was assigned overseas, I was a regular employee, but I returned to the headquarters as a manager. The sales expertise I honed abroad should be useful in my managerial role. I aim to advance step by step as a manager while bringing out the best in the younger staff. My boss, David, who sits next to me, is much younger than I am. He was promoted to his current position at a young age. I was surprised he became a director at his age. He must have achieved a lot to earn his position. Suddenly, David called me while I was dealing with the client at the meeting room. What could it be about? I left my subordinate to handle things. It must be urgent, I thought. When I got back to the office, David was sitting at his desk, waiting for me. Sorry for calling you suddenly. I need a favor. Sure, what can I do for you? It's not a big deal, really. David should understand that I was busy dealing with the client. I believe that dealing with clients should be done with utmost sincerity and priority. There must be a pressing reason he interrupted me. David, please make it quick. Why? I called you because I need to ask you something urgently. I was surprised by David's unexpected response. Does he understand that the client is waiting? A new client we signed a contract with is here to discuss the details. I can't keep them waiting. I just stepped out for a moment. That can be left to the person who secured the contract, right? That's not your job. Yes, we are delving into the contract details and progressing with the discussion. As the person in charge, my input is necessary. So, what is it you need, David? David cleared his throat before speaking. What? Is it something hard to tell me? Actually, there's a contract we want to secure today. I need you to come with me. Sorry for the sudden notice, but please get ready quickly. Huh? You're securing a contract, David? This sounded strange. That's not David's job. And why would I need to accompany him? David said it wasn't a big deal. But if it's about a contract, isn't it a big deal? David's role is company management. He handles administration and doesn't directly involve himself in making contracts. Is he involving me because it's a contract? This isn't something David should be dealing with directly. Why are you involved in this contract, David? Why can't I be involved in a contract? That's not your concern, is it? I couldn't understand what David was saying. I felt I had no choice but to comply. When do we leave? Right now. Get ready. David, that's impossible. I have work to do. David suddenly scowled. Are you defying your superior? A superior's orders are absolute. I was shocked. I can't believe there's a boss who would say something like that. Who ignores their subordinates' work like that? This is unreasonable. I reluctantly decided to leave the client dealings to my subordinate. All right, David. I'll accompany you immediately. Can you drive? Out of the blue, what's he talking about now? Does he want me to drive us there? Yes, I can drive. That's great. We'll take the company car. Just as I thought. I didn't mind. I got the company car ready and waited for David. I felt bewildered. David climbed into the car nonchalantly. Take us here. This is where our potential client is. David handed me a note. It had the name T Corp on it. T Corp? I've visited them before. I didn't mention this to David. So I knew the way well. I drove without getting lost. While driving, David said something odd. When we get to T Corp, stay in the car. What? I thought I was going to join the meeting? No, that's not necessary. I'll handle the contract alone. Don't worry about it. Then why am I even accompanying you? I didn't understand at all. If I wait in the car, I'll end up just being a chauffeur. Are you sure that's okay? I want to be of help to you, David. Just do as I say. This is necessary for the contract. Me waiting in the car is necessary for the contract? I was even more confused. David continued with his strange explanation. T Corp wants to sign the contract, but she is refusing. She? Yes. If we can win her over, the contract is ours. That's why I brought you. Wait, so you needed me in the car for this contract? Exactly. You and the car are tools to impress her. Even after treating her to her favorite diner, she didn't agree. Today, I'll show her authority. Diner? That phrase made me realize something. David, by any chance, is this woman named Emily? David, sitting in the passenger seat, widened his eyes and was at a loss for words. How do you know her name? I was just as surprised by his response. Could it really be? So it was Emily. We arrived at T Corp's parking lot and I stopped the car. I took out my business card from my bag and handed it to David. David, please give this to her. The contract will go through. What do you mean? Just trust me and give this to her before you start talking. Good luck. With that, I sent David off. A little while later, David came back. He was with a woman. It was indeed Emily. She hadn't changed a bit. I greeted Emily in front of David. We got the contract. Just as you said, everything went smoothly after I handed her your card. Then, turning to Emily with a smirk, he added, "Oh, he's just the driver. I arranged the car for you today. Since I got the contract, you remember our deal, right?" Emily nodded yes and responded to David. "Yes, I understand. I'll go out with you. But today, let's just have a drive with the driver included." Fine. Just for today. A drive? This is supposed to be work, isn't it? Is David planning to spend the day on a drive? Today, we'll just have a driving date. But next time, you know what I expect, right? A date? What's going on? I started to see David's ulterior motives. Just from that short conversation, I could understand the context behind the contract. And why Emily had been refusing. What puzzled me was why David chose me. Wouldn't it have made more sense to use a younger guy? While I was wondering about this, Emily casually asked David the same question. The driver looks older. Is he new to the company? Yes. I rose to this position at a young age, so I need to be able to boss around even older employees. When I said I'd get the contract today, this guy volunteered to come along. He's old, but he just joined the company and became a manager. So I thought I'd make him my sidekick today. So that's what he meant by showing authority. It oddly made sense. He just wanted to impress Emily. He doesn't even realize I've returned to the headquarters. He thinks I'm just some clueless old guy, huh? What kind of company promotes someone to manager based on age alone? You become a manager because you've earned it, right? David tried to use a drive date to secure the contract. But Emily isn't that kind of shallow woman. She agreed to the contract and the drive after seeing my business card. I was touched by Emily's feelings. Both Emily and I spent that day on David's drive date without revealing our identities. After politely dropping David off at his house, I finally got to be alone with Emily. Michael, it's been 12 years since you left. Has it really been that long? How have you been? When did you come back? Just recently. Today was my first day back at work. I never expected to see you on my first day. Really? It must have been fate that brought us together again. Emily smiled. She seemed genuinely happy to see me. Emily was my beloved girlfriend. We talked about marriage when we both became working adults. When the overseas assignment came up, I wanted to take Emily with me. Of course, I intended to marry her. But Emily turned down my proposal. So, I went to the UK alone. I told Emily I didn't know when I'd be back. That's why I told her not to wait for me. It wasn't how I really felt. I'll wait for you, Emily said and saw me off at the airport. It's been 12 years. Emily must be married by now. I was afraid to find out the truth. So, what do you do at your current company? Are you in a high position? I'm a director, but it's nothing special. So, were you negotiating this contract as a director? Emily chuckled. Our company is small. Major contracts involve the directors. The contract with your company was a big goal for us. I was put in charge. But for some reason, David was the representative on your side. At first, the negotiations went smoothly. But then he started whispering things in my ear. Whispering? I didn't need to hear the details to understand. From today's events, I got a good idea about David. So the negotiations stalled? David made our relationship a condition for the contract. I got scared and started recording his conversations. Emily, that was smart. That recording is your weapon. Let me hear it. Emily played the recording of David's voice for me. It was clear he wasn't talking about business. Every time I refused, he put the deal on hold. He pressured me by saying it was a loss for my company. I see. David certainly has a silver tongue. And he's handsome. He's confident in himself. So, did you agree to David's terms to finalize the contract? Even though it turned out that way, I trusted you, Michael. I believed you would help me. I trusted you with the contract. I can trust you, right? That must have been a huge decision for Emily. I nodded yes and held her hand tightly. To be prepared for any situation, we exchanged email addresses and phone numbers. I told Emily to contact me anytime she needed help, emphasizing it repeatedly. The next day, David was in an unusually good mood. He came to me with a big smile and patted me on the shoulder. Thanks to you, we got the contract. I owe you one. Let's keep this going. Keep it going? Is he asking me to set up dates with Emily? No way. We got the contract, so she's mine now. I can do whatever I want. Do whatever you want? What are you planning to do? David laughed mockingly. Can I say that in the office? It's exactly what you're thinking. I realized I had to fight David and save Emily. A few days later in the evening, I received a sudden message from Emily. It's happening already. David contacted me. I immediately stepped out of the office and called Emily. She answered right away. What did he say? He wants to have dinner tonight. He seems to have already made a reservation. Tonight? Did you make plans with him? Of course not. It's so sudden, right? David seems completely set on this. Set on what? He plans to have dinner and then take you to a hotel. What? Did he say that? He said he'd leave it to my imagination and laughed. Michael, what should I do? Don't worry, leave it to me. I'll make sure David changes his mind. Go straight home today. But don't worry about anything else. It'll be fine. After reassuring Emily and ending the call, I headed straight to David's desk. David, I need to talk to you. What is it? I'm busy today. Can we talk another day? No, it has to be today. What do you mean? David, I set aside my work to accompany you on your date. Now it's your turn to do the same for me. What are you talking about? Working hours are over. I don't have to spend time with a subordinate after hours. Does that include the contract with T Corp? David flinched at that moment. Was he feeling guilty? The contract with T Corp has nothing to do with you. You have no right to interfere. Are you sure? Did you forget? Forget what? That the contract was sealed because I showed my business card. So what? It means it wasn't your doing. With my words, David scowled. What a cheeky thing to say for a manager. First of all, you don't even know the details of the contract, do you? His pride must have been deeply wounded. It was a fact that my business card made an impact. Doesn't that seem strange to you? But David cut me off. None of that matters. Results are everything. Securing the contract is what counts. The deal with T Corp is done. As long as she agrees to my terms. That's all that matters. David's true intentions became clear. His goal wasn't the contract, it was Emily. He just wanted to possess her. He was using the negotiation and his job to achieve that. Is she that attractive to you? That's none of your business, is it? I played a part too, and it seems you're quite taken with her. True, I used your help. You found her beautiful too, didn't you? Well, yes. See? Such a beauty is rare. When she came to our office, I decided to take charge directly. I wanted to make her mine using the contract as leverage. Do you always use contracts to achieve your personal goals? David hesitated for a moment at my question. Yes. Contracts are about connecting with people. Remember that. Success, money, women, all depend on how you do it. Is that really how it works? I wondered what kind of experiences David had to reach this point. It was beyond my imagination. And now, Emily was his target. Well, I have things to do. David began gathering his things. He was probably heading straight to the restaurant. David, if she refuses your advances, what will happen to the contract? She won't refuse. Accepting my advances means she's agreed. If she refuses, the contract will be nullified. She knows that. Isn't nullifying the contract a risk for us either? David started laughing. A contract with a small company like that? It's no risk to us. That contract doesn't even matter. I just wanted her. Contracts can have personal motives too. David said this nonchalantly. He picked up his bag and prepared to leave. Wait a minute. What now? I told you I'm busy. Are you going to the restaurant? David seemed taken aback. His eyes widened. How do you know that? I had to explain to this clueless David. Everything about you is transparent to me. Emily and I have a close relationship. What do you mean? Don't you get it yet? Emily used to date me. David looked dumbfounded. He probably couldn't grasp the situation. I know you invited Emily tonight. And that's not all. You know about everything? Yes. I know all about how you've handled this contract. It's despicable. Did you think I was just a clueless old guy who wouldn't care about anything you did? I will fight you. I will protect Emily from you. Fight me? What can you, of all people, do? You didn't notice, but Emily recorded your conversations during the negotiations. At first, you whispered, but as your comments became bolder, she started recording. What was supposed to be a business discussion turned into you trying to seduce her. Did you listen to it? And there are times when you threatened Emily too. You even said you would destroy her company if she didn't comply. Does that ring a bell? We have solid evidence. I'll report this internally. Report it internally? Yes. You, of all people, should understand the consequences of that, given your ambitions. David froze. He probably had no words to respond with. David, Emily went home today. After hearing what you planned, I sent her home. So, what will you do? Cancel the contract? It's up to you. David tried to compose himself, a smirk forming on his lips. Interesting. Go ahead and try. I'll show you the consequences of defying your superior. Don't regret it later. But his shoulders were shaking. His words were empty, devoid of power. David, it's better if you stop now. Your fate is in my hands. If you give up on Emily and don't cancel the contract, I'll overlook this incident. I promise. But if you try anything funny again, I'll report you immediately. Got it? David listened to my words, then left without saying anything. Since then, David stopped contacting Emily. Emily's company strengthened its ties with ours, and their performance improved significantly. Emily's achievements were recognized, and she gained a lot of trust and respect. I remained cautious of David. Then one day, I received an unusual directive from him. My department was given a quota. Secure 30 contracts per month. That's one contract a day on average. It was an impossible target. Securing a contract is no easy task. David must know that from experience. David thought about it. This was his revenge against me. I couldn't burden my subordinates with this. I didn't relay the directive to my team. Instead, I encouraged them to keep up their usual pace. I listed potential companies for contracts. Reaching 30 contracts was unrealistic. David planned to use this to affect my performance review. Demotion or dismissal could be on the horizon. Maybe even a transfer for retraining. This was David's way of wielding power. It wasn't just about spite. I didn't intend to report David for this. It didn't involve Emily. I would report him only to protect Emily. This was a challenge I had to face alone. As a subordinate, I had to try to fulfill even unreasonable tasks. I pondered every day. There seemed to be no solution. Sleepless nights followed. What could I do without relying on my team? Then, a peculiar idea struck me. I didn't know if it would work. But I was convinced it was a solution only I could achieve. From that day, I started negotiating persistently with the London branch, explaining the situation. My long-standing connections paid off. I got special permission to participate in local work. I made a list of companies with local needs and started calling them one by one using my connections. I couldn't burden the branch. I specifically chose companies that wanted a connection with the headquarters. I managed to gather a decent number. At that point, I decided to go back to the UK. I told Emily about it. I'm going back to the UK again. Emily couldn't hide her surprise. Michael, you just got back. It's okay. I'll be back soon. Don't worry, we'll see each other again soon. Really? Promise me. I'll be waiting for you, Michael. I gratefully accepted her words at that moment. I knew I'd see her face again once I returned to the US. That alone was enough for me. It gave me more motivation for the trip. I'd do what I needed to and come back safe. For Emily too. After arriving in the UK, I stayed in a hotel while visiting the companies I had negotiated with over the phone. Since I had already progressed with the discussions over the phone, I just needed to finalize the deals in person. My goal was 3 companies a day. I traveled from morning till night. The UK is big. It's big enough to travel countrywide. After a 2-week stay, I managed to visit all the planned companies. I secured contracts with all of them. Then I safely returned to the US. Emily was there to welcome me at the airport lobby. Welcome back, Michael. Did you manage to complete your work? Yeah, thanks to you. Sorry to keep you waiting, Emily. Michael, you look worn out. Emily said I looked thinner. Apparently, I had dark circles under my eyes too. I'm fine. I'm healthy. Will you be able to relax now? No, the work isn't over yet. The important part starts now. Just a bit more to go. I see. I can't do much, but I believe in you. Do your best, Michael. With a heavy heart, I left Emily waving behind me and headed straight to the office. David was waiting for me at the office. I had informed the company about my return. Well done. So, how did it go? After spending 2 weeks, did you achieve anything? Thank you for the time. David, the quota was 30 contracts, right? Yes. Your subordinates must feel sorry for you, running around for your sake. No, that wasn't necessary. What do you mean? Have you given up? David must have thought it was impossible from the start. I could tell from his tone. But you're a manager, aren't you? You can't afford to give up. The responsibility of the department isn't just on you. It affects your subordinates too. Do you understand that? You shouldn't rush to conclusions. Oh, but it's already been a month, hasn't it? Looks like it's impossible now. David looked at me with a pitiful smile, almost ready to laugh. David, do you know why a new face, came to this workplace this year? Your personal history doesn't interest me. David said with a dismissive laugh. Did he think I was just flailing? I joined this company right after college. During my tenure at the headquarters, I was assigned to work overseas. For 12 years, I was in the UK. And now I've returned as a manager. So what? What does that have to do with your current trip? I realized David was quite dense. He should have figured out where I had gone. My 12 years were invaluable. They weren't wasted at all. What do you mean? My network in the UK proved to be very useful. I leveraged it effectively. You mentioned that contracts are about connections. I agree. But the difference is that my connections are based on trust. I worked with many people, supporting each other, and that saved me. Your connections are fleeting and opportunistic. They leave nothing behind. Such relationships are empty. Do you have any allies around you? David snorted and mocked me. The winners are those who can get the job done. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter how it's done. People are tools to be used. There's no value in relationships outside of work. Anything that can't be reused is discarded. I suppose you plan to discard Emily after you had your way with her too. You sacrifice people for contracts and manipulate them through work. I don't want to work with someone who holds such values. David seemed delighted by my words. Oh. So you're quitting? What an irresponsible person, abandoning your job. David, I've met the quota. I handed David the list of all the companies I had secured contracts with in the UK. There are exactly 30 contracts here. With the contracts my team secured, we've exceeded the target. David looked at the list in disbelief. He seemed skeptical. If you doubt it, feel free to verify. All the contracts are signed. And with this, I am resigning from the company. Naturally, my reason for leaving will be questioned. I will simply state the truth. I cannot work under you, David. I won't mention your past actions. But I will clearly outline the unreasonable quota you imposed. I wonder what the bosses will think. I look forward to finding out. With that, I turned to leave. David called out to me in a panic. Wait. I understand. Let's resolve this amicably. Amicably? What do you mean? I met the quota, so this matter is settled. Don't say that. Please don't leave. Stay for my sake and the company's. David suddenly begged, even going as far as to bow. All right, David. But no more unreasonable directives. I said this and left the office. It was already dark outside. I contacted Emily and arranged to meet her at a park near her company. Emily finished her work and hurried over. She smiled happily when she saw me. Is your work finished? Can you relax now? Yes. It's all done. There's nothing to worry about anymore. The contracts are signed, and everything is going well. Everyone appreciates your help, Michael. Thank you. That's good to hear. Don't worry about David either. He hasn't contacted me since. Michael, what did you do to him? It doesn't matter. You're safe now. I was so worried you might leave again and not come back. I told you I'd come back, didn't I? Though maybe it would have been better if I hadn't. I said something I didn't truly feel. Even though I returned, I knew I couldn't be with Emily. That thought weighed heavily on me. I had looked forward to seeing Emily more than anything. Emily suddenly looked sad. Why? Why would you say that? I'd been thinking about you constantly while I was away. I wanted to see your smiling face. But you always have to go home when the time comes. I'm left alone again. Coming home to an empty place is tough for me. It's something I can't help. Emily listened quietly to my words. Then she spoke softly to me. Michael, do you remember the words I always tell you when we part? Yes, I remember. You always say you're waiting for me. I'm still waiting now. Since our college days, nothing has changed for me. What do you mean? I can't imagine being with anyone other than you, Michael. So, I've been living alone all this time. What? Emily, you're not married? Emily shook her head. She wasn't just waiting for me to come back, she had been waiting for me all along. When I went to the UK, I told you not to wait for me. I thought you wouldn't be happy waiting for someone who didn't know when he'd return. Emily came closer to me. I wanted to go with you, but I couldn't leave my sick mother behind at that time. She passed away, but I had no way to follow you. I believed we would meet again someday, and before I knew it, here we are. So, Emily had been waiting for me. I hugged Emily tightly. A year later, we were happily married. We continued to nurture our love together. The company investigated the sudden surge of contracts I secured, which exposed David's arrogance. David was spared from being fired but was sent for retraining. He would never return to the headquarters. I was recognized for my achievements and took David's position. It was an exceptional promotion. Even though I had just returned to the headquarters as a manager, no one objected. I was praised for my incredible vitality. They said it was a miracle that I protected my subordinates and led them out of a difficult situation, despite the unreasonable directives. This recognition wasn't just for me. It was for everyone who supported me. And my greatest supporter was, of course, Emily. Thanks to her strength, I was able to achieve what I did. Together with Emily, I also became a director. We planned to support each other both at work and at home. I faced Emily again with renewed gratitude. Emily, I am truly blessed. My life has been a series of miracles, and being united with you is the greatest miracle of all. Thank you. It's all thanks to you. Michael, your life is a testament to your determination. That's why these miracles happened. I'm also happy to be with you. From now on, it's our life together. Emily was my excellent partner in both work and life. Our future was as bright as it could be. My name is Alex Johnson, 35 years old. If I hadn't had that encounter, I might still be a timid and unremarkable guy. Good job today. Thanks, you too. I respond briefly with a smile to my co-worker's greeting. Though it's been a while since I was last at the headquarters, the renovated interior makes it feel like a completely different company, leaving me feeling a bit uneasy. I'm an ordinary-looking office worker, but perhaps because I grew up in a rural area, I'm a bit excited about living in the city for the first time in years. As I walk through the floor, I suddenly notice a painting hanging in the hallway. It's a picture of a lush, green countryside. The simple painting brings back memories of my bittersweet teenage years. Yes, I think it's no exaggeration to say that back then, I experienced the love of a lifetime. It was 18 years ago, a day I will never forget. In my junior year of high school, I was seated next to a beautiful girl with striking bobbed hair and almond-shaped eyes. Her intelligent profile, long slender limbs, and flawlessly smooth white skin. Her name was Olivia. She was somewhat of a celebrity at our school. She transferred in during the winter of our sophomore year and topped the class in the very next finals. Transferring in during such a time was rare enough, but her immediate academic success at our competitive high school caused quite a stir. And with her refined beauty, even senior students would come to our classroom just to see her. Not only did our classmates try to make their moves on her, there were also rumors that even popular upperclassmen confessed. The captain of the soccer team, the ace of the judo team, the vice-captain of the tennis team, the prince of the basketball team, the top scorer of the volleyball team, the list of those who confessed to her and were turned down was endless. There were so many who got rejected that new rumors started circulating. People said she was engaged to a wealthy heir or dating a handsome college student from a prestigious university or involved with an elite from a certain medical school. Even upperclassmen were gossiping about her. But Olivia didn't seem to care about any of it. She didn't engage with the students watching her from afar and, more obviously, she didn't make friends. Always engrossed in a paperback book with a cover. She would stare intently at her book and turn the pages with her delicate fingers. She was seen as an unapproachable type. Needless to say, even though we were sitting next to each other, we had never had a single conversation. So I never imagined that we would grow closer in such a way. It was a sweltering afternoon just before the summer vacation, with the sun blazing down. Most of the students had already gone home after the closing ceremony. In the early afternoon, I was running down the hallway, out of breath. I had left all the handouts for summer assignments in the classroom. Forgetting to wipe the sweat running down my face, I yanked the classroom door open, and what I saw made me stop in my tracks. There was Olivia, slumped over her desk, asleep. Next to her was a paperback book. She must have fallen asleep while reading. As I got closer, I could see a faint sheen of sweat on her forehead. It was a scorching afternoon. If she got heatstroke, it would be terrible. I was honestly hesitant to speak to her, as we had hardly ever talked. That adolescent sense of embarrassment. But this wasn't the time for that. Determined, I was about to wake her up when my eyes fell on the paperback book next to her. Unlike usual, its cover was removed. At that moment, Olivia stirred. She stretched and slowly got up. When she looked up at me, her eyes remained unfocused for a while. I wonder how much time had passed. Unable to bear the silence, I spoke up, and Olivia suddenly widened her eyes and glanced at the paperback book. She immediately yelled and hid the book. I was the one who was taken aback by the volume of her voice, which was so unlike her usual self. I also let out a shout and involuntarily recoiled. "Did you see?" Her expression, looking at me awkwardly, appeared to be a bit childish than usual. The paperback book, usually covered, now revealed. What was she reading? She was always described as mysterious. Through the gap in her arms hiding the book, I saw it wasn't a paperback but a somewhat obscure boys' comics. The kind of mischievous comics elementary school boys read. We stared at each other in silence. It didn't take long for the distance between Olivia and me to shrink after that. It turned out I was also a fan of the comics she was reading. Once we started talking. She was far from the mysterious image she appeared to be. She was as chatty and straightforward as any of our female classmates. Well, I can't help it. I've got this stiff appearance, and I can't just say, I actually love comics, out of nowhere, can I? She spoke frankly, munching on a sandwich behind the gym. Since then, we started hanging out at that same spot after school, talking about anything while holding our study guides. Sometimes, we'd teach each other and talk about our favorite comics. Before Olivia took the top spot, I was actually the number one in our grade. While she had taken my place at the top, I didn't feel any bitterness. More than that, I felt incredibly happy, elated, and a bit giddy to have a friend with whom I could share and get excited about our studies. Olivia gradually started talking to other classmates after the summer vacation. But it still seemed like she wasn't fully opening up to them. Her tone of voice was different. When I pointed this out once, she brushed it off lightly, saying, "Really? But I talk normally with you, so it's no big deal." It didn't seem to bother her much. We had a mutual understanding to keep it a secret from everyone else. With her long eyelashes and those lips that spun humorous words, who wouldn't fall in love with her? My Adam's apple bobbed. Her profile was truly as beautiful as a sculpture. One day, when I showed a bit of insecurity, "You're at it again," Olivia said with exasperation, slapping me on the back. "You're very talented, Alex. You should have more confidence." Olivia was always there to give me a push when I needed it. At some point, I truly fell for the girl who was always encouraging me. However, our relationship came to an end in the fall of our senior year. "What's that?" Olivia muttered in a low tone. I kept my gaze down, wandering around silently. "You promised, didn't you? We'd aim for K University together." I couldn't bring myself to look directly at her as she whispered in a fading voice. It was a time when we were deep into our college entrance exams. As the wind started to feel chilly, I had been accepted to T University on a recommendation. I hadn't told Olivia that I was aiming for a recommendation. We had promised each other about half a year ago to aim for K University together. T University is a great school, but... Olivia paused. When I cautiously glanced up, our eyes met as she was staring at me intently. "With your ability, you could have definitely aimed for K University, right?" Her gaze was unwavering. Unable to withstand it, I looked down again. "I'm sorry." Yes, I had run away from the college entrance exam competition. We both aimed for the business school at K University. Among the private universities known for their difficulty, K University's business school was particularly popular, with intense competition. Our mock exam scores both placed us at C rank. It was hard to say we would get in easily. Still, Olivia would undoubtedly continue to aim for K University. With her relentless drive and strong will, she would surely succeed in the exams. But I was scared. I kept imagining a scenario where only Olivia got in. I couldn't picture myself passing the exam for K University, and I started losing focus while studying. I started to fear I wouldn't get accepted anywhere. That's when I grabbed the chance for a recommendation from T University. If I got greedy, I might end up not getting accepted anywhere. Failing K University, and then regret not choosing the recommendation from T University would have been too late. Not getting accepted anywhere would be hell. So, when I was accepted, I felt an immense sense of relief. Are you really okay with that? Olivia muttered quietly. I remained silent for a while, then slowly nodded. I see. The reason I chose T University was because I wasn't confident about getting into K University. That was a big factor, but even if I did get in, with my current academic level, I would barely keep up with the classes. I could only envision myself getting exhausted from the relentless studying every day. I couldn't see my future at K University. I deeply regretted making an easy promise to aim for K University with Olivia. But I couldn't bring myself to say it to Olivia, who was steadily moving toward her goal. After silently looking at me for a while, Olivia finally said, "Congratulations, Alex," and smiled. That was her answer. Olivia quietly walked past me as I stood there in shock. Left alone, I felt crushed by the sense of defeat that had surfaced alongside my relief when I got the recommendation. Since that day, I never went back to our spot behind the gym. As expected, Olivia got into K University, and I went to T University. We both secured admission to prestigious universities and were congratulated by those around us, but we never exchanged smiles. We didn't keep in touch after that, and neither of us attended reunions, so I had no idea what Olivia was doing. 5 years after that farewell. At 23, I ran into Olivia by chance in the city. I was working for a company, and Olivia was working for another. We started meeting again, drawn to each other. We were probably just young back then. Now, I think I can understand your feelings and choices a little better, Alex. Olivia, now a bit more mature, said this with a smile. I didn't know what had happened. Olivia didn't want to talk about it, and I didn't push her. But Olivia often had a weary expression. Something must have changed her perspective. But Olivia never talked about it. Naturally, I didn't share anything about the 5 years after we parted ways. Not long after, we got married. However, less than a year later, I was assigned a new post overseas. Olivia didn't want to quit her job at the time, so she couldn't move with me, but she also didn't want to be in a long-distance relationship. So, within just a year of marriage, we faced our separation for the second time. I don't know where Olivia is or what she's doing now. But knowing Olivia, I'm sure she's still pushing forward and doing her best. Drawn in by a painting, I found myself uncharacteristically sentimental. My thoughts were brought back to reality by cheerful laughter coming from ahead. Shaking my head lightly, I looked up to see a man walking with exaggerated gestures, followed by a woman smiling slightly. As they passed by, the man's arm, gesturing grandly, bumped into my shoulder. Watch where you're going. It wasn't me who said that, it was him. Even though he was the one who bumped into me. Oh, sorry. I apologized reflexively. The woman behind him looked at me with a tense expression. Olivia. I found myself saying out loud. Alex. Huh? You know each other? The man looked at us, surprised. Why are you here? Ignoring the man, I spoke to Olivia. I got a new job 6 months ago. Olivia squinted nostalgically. Oh, an old classmate, huh? What a coincidence. The man, seemingly displeased with being left out, joined the conversation. Alex, right? Nice to meet you. I'm Joshua, head of the planning department. Joshua emphasized his title as head of the planning department. I remembered hearing about a young guy who had been promoted for his achievements 6 months ago. Our company, being a foreign firm, decided positions entirely based on merit, without regard for seniority. Some people even got promoted to executive positions in their 20s. Nice to meet you. Oh, don't worry about formalities. We're probably close in age, so no need to be overly polite. Joshua interrupted me with a friendly smile. He had a look that seemed to say, "See how nice I am? By the way, Olivia is my direct subordinate." At first, I wondered if it was okay to have a newly joined woman suddenly in the planning department. But she's full of ideas and always reliable. My work wife. Joshua looked at Olivia, seeking her agreement with a right. Olivia smiled beautifully. "Oh, please don't call me that. I'm the one who's always relying on you, Joshua." Joshua seemed satisfied with her response and nodded with a broad smile. From Olivia's reaction, it seemed my work wife was a term Joshua used to indicate he liked Olivia. "Hey, you." Joshua shifted his gaze from Olivia to me, as if he had just remembered something. "Newbie, could you go get us some coffee from over there? We just finished an important meeting. And I was thinking of taking a break with my work wife, Olivia." He pointed to a vending machine with a jerk of his chin. "So, this is what they call being sent on an errand. Hey, Joshua, could you stop calling me your work wife? Oops, sorry. I just can't help saying it. You are just so adorable." Noticing my dumbfounded expression, Joshua added, "Don't worry, I'll pay for it. I only have a $100 bill right now." "Let me know your department and name later," he said, waving his hand as he headed toward the break room. I sighed and thought, do I have any change? As I started toward the vending machine. Just then, it happened. "Mr. Vice President." Everyone stopped in their tracks at the voice coming from behind. Turning around, I saw a tall, slender woman with a slightly stern expression standing there. "What are you doing here?" She walked briskly toward me and handed me a stack of documents. "Chairman Miller has been looking for you. I've prepared the requested materials, so please review them before the meeting starts." Joshua and Olivia were speechless. I awkwardly accepted the documents from the woman. "The meeting isn't until this evening." I was trying to avoid being caught. "I understand, but it's important to have tea with the executives." I didn't say it out loud, but my thoughts, most of his talk is just complaining, and I hate it, must have shown on my face. The woman sighed and said, "I've informed them that you have been summoned by President Davis before the meeting, so it will be brief." Hearing this, I made a small victory gesture, which seemed to confuse Joshua even more. "No way, Vice President?" "Yes, exactly." The woman cut off Joshua. "The official announcement was made at noon today, so it's understandable that you weren't aware. Mr. Johnson will be promoted to Vice President starting next month. I am Katie, his secretary." Katie gave a slight bow to Joshua and Olivia. Joshua's face turned pale as he opened and closed his mouth wordlessly. Behind him, Olivia, with wide eyes, stared at me. I shrugged slightly. "Sorry, did I surprise you?" "It's more than just a surprise." Olivia bit into a sandwich at a nearby cafe. Her manner of speaking and the way she ate hadn't changed since those days, and I found myself smiling unconsciously. After that, Joshua apologized profusely to me, almost in tears. Watching him with a cold gaze, I quietly asked Katie before the meeting, "Was it really necessary to call me Vice President in front of them when my appointment is next month?" She deeply bowed, saying, "I'm sorry, I got a little angry." President Davis, who had been watching this exchange, just laughed. "Vice President, really? You've worked so hard." Olivia murmured, placing her sandwich on the table and reaching for her coffee. Back in high school, Olivia loved sweet things. Now she drinks black coffee, I noted to myself. I always felt I needed to properly apologize and thank you, Olivia. Olivia's eyes wavered with confusion. "What do you mean?" "For breaking our promise, and for breaking up when I moved overseas." "You were right, Alex. Like I mentioned before, I understand even better now." I started sharing a story with Olivia that I had never told before. When we were 22, because Olivia didn't like talking about the past, I hadn't talked about it either. It was after graduating high school and enrolling at T University. At T University, I threw myself into studying and extracurricular activities with all my might. All to build my self-confidence. I had always hated my own weakness. I could never take decisive action at critical moments. Fearful of failure, I hesitated to take on challenges. I always chose the safe path, afraid of what might happen if I failed. How many times have I been cursed by this personality of mine? I ended up running away from the entrance exams and from the person I loved. That regret had always been with me. So, in college, I decided to change myself. I resolved to do everything I could. I was more active than I could have ever imagined. I seized every opportunity to challenge myself. I boldly took on things I had never done before or thought might be difficult. And once I started something, I gave it my all within my abilities. I valued taking responsibility for my challenges. All of this was driven by Olivia. If we ever met again, I wanted to tell her that I had lived a life without regrets. Living a proactive college life was busy but fulfilling, and I found myself truly enjoying it. I actively attended classes and obtained every qualification I could. I energetically participated in volunteer work and community service activities. Then came the job search. I visited various companies, but I was captivated by Mr. Davis, the then vice president, who is now president. He spoke passionately about the company's merits. There was no seniority system. Everything was merit-based. I wanted to test myself in such an environment, and it's been 13 years since I decided to join the company. I never imagined I'd make vice president. I took a sip of coffee to hide my slight embarrassment. Olivia, who had been staring at me, sighed and looked down. I never talked about it, but back during the college entrance exams, I thought you were a fool for running away from yourself, Alex. No matter how tough it got, if you hadn't run away back then, we could have both gotten into K University and had an exciting college life together. Olivia's words were spot on. Yeah, you're right. I did run away back then. No, you didn't. Olivia lifted her gaze to me. You were right. If you weren't confident, it was okay to run. I realized later that forcing yourself to fight despite the burden on your heart isn't the only correct answer. As she spoke, Olivia looked down again. Her long eyelashes were the same, but she seemed less confident than before, which had always concerned me. Then Olivia began to speak, hesitantly, about her life after graduation, something she had never talked about before. She entered K University, meeting everyone's expectations. She aimed to have the best college life after enrolling. But K University was tough. She found herself surrounded by extremely smart people and felt an insurmountable wall, no matter how hard she studied. Keeping up with the classes was all she could manage. She couldn't understand the material, and assignments took her 10 times longer than others, yielding poor grades. Despite her efforts, her grades didn't improve. Worse yet, she was outperformed by people who treated their studies half-heartedly. Olivia's motivation had always been to work hard and achieve good grades to get results. The harder she worked, the better the results would be. She loved the moments when she could see the results of her efforts and praise herself. She enjoyed feeling that all her hard work had paid off. But gradually, her efforts stopped leading to results. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't get good results. She kept getting overtaken by her peers. If it was this hard in the first year, she feared she would fall behind even more in the increasingly specialized second and third years. She was overwhelmed by a vague sense of fear every day. Even if she dedicated all her time to studying, sacrificing socializing, meals with friends, and extracurricular activities, her results barely scraped by. The classes were fast-paced, and she couldn't keep up. Just taking notes from the board took all her effort, and when she reviewed them at home, it took hours to understand what she had written. Olivia, always studying and not socializing, had no one she could call a friend, no one to casually ask for help. Her classmates effortlessly understood the lessons and enjoyed their free time. She couldn't bring herself to ask them for help, fearing they would mock her. She couldn't admit to anyone that despite studying constantly, she could barely keep up with the class. She couldn't ask the teachers directly. She had no friends. She couldn't talk to her parents about it either. Her parents, who had always seen her as an exemplary student, would be saddened to hear she was struggling so much in college. They might be disappointed in her. Olivia, feeling desperate, strained herself until she couldn't attend university anymore. It took me a year to recover, both mentally and physically. Of course, I had to repeat a year, Olivia said with a self-deprecating laugh. Even when she wanted to work hard, her body wouldn't move. She couldn't even think straight. Her mind was in a fog. Even taking a bath or having a meal was a struggle for me back then. When she tried to go to school, she would turn back at the gate, overcome with fear. When she tried to open a textbook, her hands would tremble. She felt an overwhelming urge to escape. Her heart would race, and she couldn't stay still. This state of affairs went on, back and forth, until a year had passed before she realized it. She felt like a failure for making her parents sad. While others were enjoying their classes, why was she unable to do anything? She often blamed herself. However, her parents didn't blame her. You've done nothing wrong. You just overworked yourself and it's like your heart has caught a cold. Rest a bit and you'll be back to your old self. Don't rush, just focus on resting for now. Those words saved Olivia. She realized it wasn't because she was weak. Being told this allowed her to forgive herself. Returning to university was initially terrifying. She feared facing her own inadequacies and breaking again. But Olivia kept fighting. She managed to overcome her setbacks with sheer determination, gradually attending classes regularly, and eventually graduated. She chose a stable job, but time passed without feeling fulfilled. Around this time, we met again, but Olivia couldn't talk about her college struggles because of what she had said to me in high school. At first, she was nervous that I might ask, but when I didn't, she felt relieved and realized she loved that about me even more. We got married and then separated a year later. After we split, I spent years convincing myself that it was for the best and that I needed to work hard to catch up on what I had missed and get back on the elite track. I worried my parents would be disappointed, thinking I was supposed to be more capable. But then I found you on a job hunting website by chance. I almost spit out my coffee at her words. I remembered doing an interview for job seekers within the company a year ago. I thought it was a mistake at first. Reading about an executive flying around to overseas offices and research facilities while concurrently working as a senior manager. I knew you had gone abroad, but I didn't realize it was such a big deal. When we were married, you never talked much about your work. So I didn't know. The company had changed its name since then, so I didn't even think it was the same place you worked. Olivia smiled wryly as she sipped her coffee. I saw you steadily advancing in your career and wondered what I had been doing. What had I accomplished? I felt restless. I scratched my chin, unable to meet her eyes directly. When I glanced at her, I noticed that the uncertainty in her expression seemed to have softened a bit. I'm really glad I met you again. I wished I could have met you after I'd become more confident, though. Olivia lowered her gaze for a moment, then looked up with a resolute smile. I'm planning to take on a new challenge if I can achieve some success in the planning department. Will you support me then? Her confident tone made me nod without hesitation. Of course. I'll do everything I can to help. I wouldn't be where I am today without you, Olivia. And I wouldn't have recovered without you, Alex. There were so many times I almost gave up, but each time, I thought of you and pushed through. Wanting to be someone you wouldn't be ashamed of became my motivation. Almost instinctively, we both reached out. We shook hands firmly and finally exchanged words of reunion. It's good to see you again after so long. Yes, it's really good to see you too, Alex. After that, we never met alone again. I finally understood Olivia's past. Her troubled face when she was 23 and her refusal to quit her job or accept a long-distance marriage after we got married now made sense. Olivia was desperate. She wasn't just fighting as a wife but as an individual, striving to keep up with me and our peers. She was striving to be someone she could be proud of, someone she could think was doing her best. For her, that measure of effort was her job. Understanding this gave me a sense of clarity. At the same time, it felt like I had finally resolved the bitter separations we had at 18 and 23. 5 years later, Olivia became our company's first female overseas branch manager and went abroad. Despite being busy with business expansion, my days have been fulfilling. 3 years ago, I married Katie, whom I had been secretly dating since joining the company, and we had our first child a year ago. I was a bit late to become a father, but I'm giving my all. I participated in relay races and parent-child competitions at school events. Though nothing reignited between Olivia and me, we now motivate each other as old friends. Having experience in an overseas branch, I have online meetings with Olivia several times a month. Seeing her grow more confident and formidable inspires me and boosts my motivation. My wife supports and watches over this warmly, running away and facing challenges without fear. Both are important and both are correct. Being honest with your feelings and facing them truthfully. Doing the best you can at that moment. That will surely guide your life in a good direction. If you're too hard on yourself, it's easy to break down. So, value yourself and those around you. I've learned that it's important to continue on your own path, cherishing your heart and decide how to color your life. Sometimes I will make mistakes, but without fearing them, I will keep looking ahead and moving forward. It's pathetic to see the talentless licking each other's wounds. Liam, don't ever show your face in front of me again. My boss, Shane, framed me at the company I work for, and without any chance to defend myself. I was transferred to a branch office on a remote island. The situation at the new post was terrible, with a dark atmosphere and no one having any motivation. However, something happened that significantly changed my perspective. Rachel, the department head, looked at me in astonishment as I achieved a month's worth of targets in a single day. Who exactly are you? What followed was an unexpected and shocking turn of events. My name is Liam. I'm a 37-year-old single, ordinary office worker at a large corporation. By the time you're in your late 30s, most of your friends are married with kids. Some even started families right after high school, so it's not uncommon to hear that their kids are about to become adults. It's not that I didn't want to get married, I just wasn't cut out for romance. I had a girlfriend once, but our values clashed as I prioritized work while she prioritized her personal life, leading to frequent conflicts. In the end, she disappeared without a word, and our relationship naturally faded away. Since then, I've lived alone, feeling like my work was my partner. I joined my current company 5 years ago through a connection, so I still feel like a newbie. Despite that, I have reliable juniors and colleagues I can trust, making me feel blessed in terms of human relationships. I find my work fulfilling and can leverage my strengths, so there's no problem. I vaguely wished these ordinary days would continue forever. Then, one day, my life took a significant turn because of one person. First, let me explain why I changed jobs in my 30s. Though I don't have a new family of my own, I have my mother. My father passed away from an illness when I was young, so I don't have many memories of him. My mother, despite being frail, raised me single-handedly after my father's death, ensuring I never struggled. I'm deeply grateful to her. However, before I could show my gratitude, my mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, often called the silent killer, and passed away. This reminded me of something. When my father died, I was in elementary school, and my mother told me I wanted to become a superhero who could save people in pain. Essentially, a doctor. I studied hard from that point, and my mother supported me by sending me to a tutoring center. I wanted to attend a private middle school, but I didn't want to burden my mother. I believed that as long as I studied hard, I could become a doctor, even in public middle and high schools. So I aimed to progress while keeping costs low. However, I experienced a setback and never achieved my dream of becoming a doctor. Becoming a doctor isn't easy. Even if you become a doctor, there's no guarantee you'll become a competent one. After facing numerous obstacles and setbacks, I gave up on the medical field and decided to work as an ordinary office worker. I loved math enough to choose a science and math-focused high school, and I was close friends with someone attending a technical college. So I taught myself programming. By the time I was a student, I had the skills to create my own games. This skill is now useful in my current company. Although I had no practical experience in the IT industry, I was rigorously trained by my seniors for a few months, and after 5 years, it has become my strength. The connection that led me to this company was a friend from the technical college recommending me. And I passed the screening and interviews on my own. Of course, large corporations aren't easy to get into through connections alone. So, I take pride in getting in on my own merit. Although I'm 37, I've only been with the company for 5 years, so I don't have any positions yet and am still a regular employee. In my previous job, I was entrusted with significant responsibilities. So I'm content with the current environment where I just need to do my assigned tasks well. One day, something happened. Mason, our section chief, resigned due to personal reasons at the end of the previous year. and Shane took over from this April. I work at the headquarters, but we have branches all over the US. Shane, who had been the manager at this branch, was promoted to section chief at the headquarters due to his exceptional skills. I was assigned to the system development section of the systems department. Shane's programming skills were so impressive that when I saw his efficient and clean source code, I couldn't help but say, wow. The system development section was buzzing with excitement over having such a talented individual join, but soon tension began to fill the air. This was because Shane distinguished employees based on their capabilities. Being highly capable himself, Shane looked down on employees who weren't as skilled, almost as if they were something dirty. He was incredibly kind to employees who were quick and produced high-quality work, like the senior who had taught me. But he was harsh and sometimes outright unreasonable to those who didn't meet his standards. I believed that with patient guidance and practical experience, anyone could grow, as that had been my own experience. But Shane dismissed this as a waste of time and cost. He continued working with those who could keep up with him and relegated those who couldn't do menial tasks, saying they were just in the way. As a regular employee with average performance, I didn't catch much of Shane's attention. However, the incident with my colleague Jessica plunged me into a downward spiral. Jessica had joined the company as a mid-career hire just 6 months ago. She was very meticulous and had a pleasant demeanor, which earned her respect from Mason as well. But because Jessica's thoroughness made her slow, sometimes taking twice as long as others. Mason said about that, "She's only been with us a short time and will grow with experience." However, to Shane, who prioritized efficiency, Jessica became a nuisance and, unfortunately, was chosen as the target of his sarcasm. Shane would call Jessica out at every opportunity. He would then unnecessarily berate her in front of everyone, loudly pointing out even minor mistakes like typos. At first, Jessica endured it, but she eventually reached her breaking point and began to cry. The other employees, knowing that speaking up would only make things worse, looked on helplessly. Shane then sighed dramatically and said, "Crying won't fix anything. I don't play favorites based on gender. You're being scolded because you're incompetent." Jessica's shoulders trembled, and she bit her lip in humiliation. Jessica certainly wasn't trying to use her tears to gain sympathy. But being spoken to like that must have deeply hurt her pride. Unable to stand by and watch any longer, I intervened. "Shane, that's enough. This approach is wrong. Yelling at someone in front of everyone won't make them work faster. Please show some consideration." This consideration included not only Jessica but also the other employees who were silently enduring the situation. However, Shane was angered by my defiance. In short, I became his new target. Even though he had previously paid no attention to me, he started scrutinizing my background after my intervention. He discovered that I had only been with the company for 5 years and had been recommended by a friend. He took advantage of that and started calling me Recommendation Rookie. My colleagues, who had shared many experiences with me over the past 5 years, did not call me that and supported me. But I am only human. Being called that made me feel bad, and employees from other departments who didn't know the full story started to look at me with disdain. Although my friend tried to explain, Shane's influence was too strong. As a result, I became ostracized outside of the system development section, and Shane delivered the final blow. He took away all the work I had diligently been doing. His reason was simple: he said he couldn't trust me. If Shane had been an incompetent person, it would have been easier, but unfortunately, he was an elite. Clients had no problem with Shane taking over my responsibilities, so they didn't complain. Upper management assumed that I had abandoned my work and Shane was picking up the slack. Consequently, I was exiled. I was reassigned to a branch on a remote island I had never heard of. In effect, it was a demotion, and I felt lost about what to do next. But time waits for no one. I had to completely hand over my current tasks by the end of the month, move by mid-next month, and start working by the end of the month. Despite being overwhelmed with work, I managed to complete the necessary procedures by the end of the month. As I was saying my goodbyes to the employees, Jessica approached me with an apologetic look on her face. "I'm really sorry that you got pushed out because of me, Liam. It's my fault for not doing my job properly and not standing up for you. I'm truly sorry," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. Of course, none of this was Jessica's fault. I never thought that my transfer was because of her. Instead, I convinced myself that it was my own fault for standing up to Shane without thinking. It's not your fault, Jessica. It's my lack of ability that's the problem. Just then, a voice called out from behind. It's pathetic to see the talentless licking each other's wounds. Liam, I never want to see your face again. Don't show up at the headquarters unless you have a reason. Even if you do, don't talk to me. After saying this, Shane snorted and walked away. A tense atmosphere filled the room, so I forced a smile and tried to part with everyone amicably. Soon after, I resolved to somehow achieve results at the new branch and return to the headquarters. I wanted to prove the upper management wrong for this unreasonable transfer and restore the honor of my friends who had been disgraced because of me. With these feelings, I arrived at the branch on the remote island, but the reality was far harsher than I expected. Caught up in my busy schedule, I hadn't researched much about this branch, but I discovered a shocking truth. This branch had the lowest sales in the entire country. As soon as I stepped into the office, I understood why. The employees looked gloomy and unmotivated. The heavy atmosphere and lackluster conversations made me mutter under my breath, "This is unbelievable." Despite the situation, I introduced myself, but an employee responded, "Just keep it simple, that's how we do things here." Which left me even more perplexed. Then, a clear voice echoed in my ears. "You must be Liam, the new recruit. I've heard about you. Let's do our best together." Turning around, I saw a tall, beautiful woman, almost as tall as I am, standing there. Her name was Rachel. She was the head of the systems department at this remote island branch. Unlike the other unmotivated employees, Rachel seemed full of energy and enthusiasm. After 2 months of working under Rachel, I learned the ropes of the job here. And I realized something important. Rachel was incredibly competent at her job, with no flaws in that regard. However, there was one thing that bothered me. Rachel's enthusiasm seemed to be misdirected. Unlike the headquarters, where there was a separate sales department, the remote island branch's sales division was integrated into the systems department. Rachel ended up doing sales rounds because the sales staff lacked motivation. While Rachel's client interactions weren't bad, her proposals seemed too focused on boosting the company's sales. I felt she wasn't genuinely connecting with the clients, and it seemed they sensed it too. As a result, even good proposals lacked the decisive impact, and clients were hesitant to agree. This pattern repeated several times, and I understood why this branch's sales were so low. Rachel's enthusiasm was misdirected, and the other employees only did the bare minimum, ignoring their quotas. No promotions even if you work hard, because it's a remote island branch. This phrase became a demoralizing mantra that sapped everyone's motivation. 3 months passed since I joined the remote island branch. I finished my initial training and was about to start working independently. Since I was already used to working solo at the headquarters, I wasn't worried about that aspect. However, I encountered a problem here. Alright, from now on, you're a fully fledged member of our team. But you still have a long way to go. To impress everyone at the headquarters, you must meet this quota. You want to return to the headquarters with outstanding achievements, right? To be honest, I no longer had such ambitions. I realized that I had been influenced by the lack of motivation among the other employees. Reflecting on it now, it's clear that I found Rachel's well-meaning meddling to be annoying. Of course, I had no objections to being given the same quotas as the others. But I felt the need to correct her misunderstanding that I wanted to return to the headquarters. However, it's rare to find a boss who cares this much about one employee. Rachel must understand the dire state of this entire branch. Yet, she's still working so positively. I felt that telling her it's fine would be like denying her efforts, so I swallowed the words that were about to come out. One day, while continuing with my sales and system development duties, it was past 7 p.m. by the time I got back to the office due to a customer's schedule. No one in this office voluntarily stays late. I expected the office to be empty, but the lights were still on. Thinking someone had forgotten to turn them off, I opened the door to find Rachel staring at her computer under a single light, surrounded by stacks of paperwork. I couldn't help but speak up. "What are you doing here at this hour? Don't you have a young daughter? Shouldn't you be going home?" Rachel noticed my voice and turned towards me with a wry smile. Oh, it's fine. Even though I'm a single mom, I live with my parents, and my daughter understands. I told you to go straight home, didn't I? Did you forget something? Rachel had mentioned that she became a single mother after her husband passed away from an illness and now lives with her elderly parents and daughter. Although life would be easier in the city, Rachel's father, who lives with her, has an illness and is receiving treatment at the only hospital on this remote island. So, she chose to live here deliberately. Her father was adamant about not leaving for the city center, wanting to spend his last days at the remote island where he was born and raised. They couldn't afford the high costs of advanced medical care in the city, so home treatment was the main option. Rachel works so hard, even spinning her wheels, because she has a family to protect. Even if she's resented or complained about, she works late into the night for the sake of her beloved daughter and parents. I felt ashamed for ever thinking of Rachel as a nuisance. I sat down beside Rachel's desk and said, "I'm sure your daughter feels lonely, even if she doesn't say so. And this workload, it's not just your job. Is it? Let me help you. Let's at least finish the essential tasks." I then took half of the stacked documents. Rachel looked at me with surprise. I felt a connection to Rachel's daughter. Perhaps because I was raised by a single mother myself. My mother also worked tirelessly to raise me well, so she was rarely home. Knowing she worked hard for me, I never voiced my loneliness. So, I'm sure Rachel's daughter is also trying to be a good girl, even if she's lonely. As I sorted the documents, I asked Rachel, "How can you keep working so hard in this situation?" Rachel smiled softly and replied, "I want the big shots at the headquarters to recognize me. As the breadwinner, if I earn a lot, my family can live comfortably. And my late husband always said that if you smile, things will go well. So no matter how tough it gets, I never lose my smile. That's all there is to it." Rachel's words and her earnest demeanor deeply moved me. Though I felt ashamed of my past self, regretting it wouldn't change anything. So, I decided to start fresh from tomorrow. With that resolve, I finished the work in front of me and left the office by 8 p.m. The next day, I arrived at the office and started moving briskly to meet my assigned quotas. I approached the slacking employees and said, "If you're free, could you help with this? I've already reviewed it with Rachel. So it should only need minor adjustments." In reality, I was just returning the work that Rachel had been covering for the other employees. One of the slackers, Miles, came over and said, "But Rachel took it on, so she should handle it, right?" That might have been fine until now. But continuing like this would perpetuate a negative spiral where hard-working people get the short end of the stick. Rachel didn't take on extra work because she wanted to. I'm not just randomly assigning tasks. For example, these documents I handed to you, Miles, are actually your responsibilities. You can handle them quickly, can't you? Do you want to stay stagnant here? Personally, I'd hate to be outperformed by someone who was transferred from the headquarters, I said provocatively, watching Miles gulp. The next moment, Miles laughed loudly and said, "Wow, Liam, the new guy who's been here for 3 months, is telling me this? Guys, are we just going to sit around and watch this?" Then he went back to his desk and started working. His attitude seemed to influence the other employees, who followed suit, saying, "Yeah, he's right," and returned to their desks. Rachel observed all this quietly. In fact, she had told me something on the way out yesterday. Miles is a mood maker. He used to be very motivated and serious about his work. But he realized no one at the headquarters cares about the lowest sales branch. His motivation dropped, and he dragged everyone else down with him. But I think if we can just flip his switch, he could be amazing again. After that, Rachel continued to tell us about the characteristics of each employee. I took all that information to heart and thought about how to ignite each person's motivation. As a result, the employees influenced by Miles started working with a new vigor, as if their instincts had been awakened. Seeing such teamwork, which was rare in the city, filled me with a warm feeling. The people here must have been working while respecting each other's feelings and attitudes. That's why Miles, as a mood maker, was so important. A few hours later, I stood before Rachel to report on the day's work. Rachel received the report and, alternating between looking at me and the report, exclaimed in disbelief, "You completed a month's worth of targets in just one day? No way, this is unbelievable." The sales are at an all-time high. And you're indisputably number one. Who are you really? I heard you were demoted from the headquarters. But someone this capable being demoted doesn't make sense. Rachel then asked how I ended up assigned here. I hadn't planned to answer, but her persistent questions left me no choice. With a wry smile, I explained what had happened at the headquarters. The target Rachel mentioned was likely set by the headquarters, underestimating this branch due to its poor sales. For me, this task was simple enough to complete within a week, even if it took some time. This time, I did it in a day to boost everyone's motivation, which wasn't particularly extraordinary. Shane, who had sent me here, would probably say it's expected. While explaining my situation, Rachel suddenly stood up, visibly angry. She said it was an unfair transfer and that she would protest. But I calmed her down. Thank you, but it's all right. At first, I was bewildered, but seeing you and everyone's attitude today, I realized I'm glad I came here. There's a spirit of cooperation and warm human relationships. Plus, living on an island is like enjoying a slow life. I don't want to go back to the headquarters, I want to work here with everyone. As I said, Rachel looked momentarily bewildered. However, she quickly broke into a beaming smile, patted my back, and said, "Looking forward to working with you. You're the shining star of this branch." 6 months had passed since I came to the remote island branch. Contrary to the belief that low sales were due to the employees' lack of motivation, the actual issue lay in the system. Headquarters and branches near cities could easily attract people, bringing in talented individuals. In contrast, rural and remote island branches constantly struggled with staffing issues, and this branch was no exception. Most skilled technicians preferred working at city branches or the headquarters, leaving us with very few proficient in programming. When I tweaked the system structure, sales increased significantly. The numbers spoke for themselves. Previously, our transactions were limited to within the remote island, but recently, we've been getting constant requests from the mainland to use the systems developed by our branch. I simply utilized the skills I had honed over the years, and with the efforts of my colleagues who went to the mainland for sales, we achieved these results together. Everyone was happy, and I felt satisfied contributing to the progress of IT on this remote island. One day, Rachel made an announcement. "Everyone, listen. Due to our significant increase in sales and contributions to system development, we're receiving special bonuses. And we've shed the shame of being the lowest grossing branch in the network. All thanks to everyone's hard work over the past few months." She suggested a celebratory party tonight, enthusiastically offering to treat everyone. Knowing Rachel was a single mother, we hesitated, but she insisted on sharing her bonus with everyone. Having learned that Rachel wouldn't back down once she decided on something, we all eventually accepted her offer. After work, we had our celebration at the best-rated barbecue place in the remote island. However, towards the end, Rachel stepped out with a pale face, clutching her phone. Concerned, I followed her and found her unusually distraught, shouting into her phone, "No, it can't be true. My father collapsed. Is there no way to save him?" Rachel was so panicked that, despite holding her phone to her ear, it was on speaker, and I could hear the conversation. Her father had collapsed at home and been rushed to the hospital. He was in critical condition, unconscious, and while they managed some emergency treatment, he needed surgery. But the remote island's only hospital had just one surgeon, Dr. Kenneth, who had identified the problem but found the surgery too complex for the nurses who had no experience with such cases. If only there were another surgeon. They could airlift him to a city hospital, but the helicopter had just left with a critically ill pregnant woman. Even at the earliest, it would take an hour for the helicopter to return. In this dire situation, Rachel, with tears streaming down her face, continued to plead with Dr. Kenneth over the phone. "Dr. Kenneth, please, save my father. I don't care how much it costs, just save him." Rachel's father was in critical condition, and Rachel seemed to be losing her composure. Unable to stand by and watch any longer, I approached Rachel. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but we need to get to your father quickly. I'll let Miles know about the bill and have him explain to everyone. They'll understand. Plus, I haven't had any alcohol, so I'll drive us right now." There was no time to persuade the stunned Rachel. I took her by the hand, helped her into my car, and we rushed to the hospital. When we arrived at the hospital room where Rachel's father had been taken, her mother and daughter were already there, staring at us. Dr. Kenneth explained the current situation as soon as Rachel arrived. It was as we feared. We could only hope her father would hold on until the helicopter returned. Realizing she might be witnessing her husband's final moments, Rachel's mother looked somber. Her daughter, still in elementary school, seemed confused as she looked back and forth between her mother and grandmother. I had no place to intervene. I didn't have the right to do anything. But I couldn't just stand by and watch. I'm a doctor. Although I'm currently working as an engineer under Rachel, I used to be an emergency physician. I have experience in surgery. Dr. Kenneth, could I assist you? Everyone turned to look at me. Dr. Kenneth, surprised, said, "What?" But when I showed my medical license, which I always carried with my ID, his expression changed. Immediately, an office staff member verified my credentials, confirming I was indeed a licensed doctor. Dr. Kenneth asked, "How long has it been since you last practiced?" It had been some time, but my body still remembered the routines and procedures from my days as a medical student, intern, and emergency physician. No, it was ingrained. Yes, I can do it. With that single sentence, Dr. Kenneth nodded firmly. We quickly proceeded with the paperwork to contract me as a freelance doctor, and Dr. Samuel, the head of the hospital, pleaded, "Please, save her father." As everyone prayed, Rachel's father was sedated and taken into surgery. I worked tirelessly alongside Dr. Kenneth and the available nurses. Several hours later, as the sun was rising, the surgery was finally over. Rachel, who hadn't slept at all, ran towards me. Her eyes were shadowed with exhaustion. "Liam, is he?" Hearing her weak voice, I could tell what a tough time she had been through in those hours. Wanting to reassure her, I smiled and said, "The surgery was a success. It'll take some time for him to wake up, and even then, he'll need to stay at a mainland hospital for further treatment and observation, but the worst is over." Hearing this, Rachel, who usually exuded strength, broke down like a child, sobbing and collapsing to the floor. "You're not just an amazing engineer, but also a doctor? Stop surprising me." As she sobbed, I gently rubbed her back until she calmed down. A year later, I left the company, much to everyone's regret. I decided to leave because of Dr. Samuel's persistent offers and the realization of the severe issues facing remote island healthcare. I had left medicine to escape the harsh realities of being an emergency physician. Witnessing tragic scenes and feeling hopeless had pushed me to my limit. Even though my dream was to save lives, I couldn't face my inner conflicts. After quitting medicine, I remembered my interest in programming from my student days and pursued it intensely. Around that time, a friend recommended me to the company. I never planned to return to medicine. But now, I realize I had been too self-focused and not empathetic enough towards patients. Now, I can face patients sincerely without feeling the fear I once did. I work as a general practitioner at the hospital and also collaborate with my former company on system development when I have time. Medical and IT fields may seem entirely different, but they are closely related. Nowadays, there are even universities where you can study both simultaneously. Here in Remote Island, I'm likely the only one capable of excelling in both fields. So, I feel most fulfilled now, using my skills for the benefit of everyone. One day, when everything seemed to be going smoothly, I received news that a family had come from the city to visit a girl hospitalized in the pediatric ward. Previously, another doctor had been in charge of her case, but with their retirement, I was appointed as the successor. Coincidentally, during my medical student days, I had researched the illness the girl was suffering from and even wrote my thesis on it. This might have influenced the decision to appoint me as her new doctor. The girl's family was originally from this remote island, but her father worked on the mainland, returning only once every few months. To my surprise, her father was Shane, the very person who had sent me to this remote island. Shane had already been informed by his wife about the change in the attending physician and, of course, knew it was me. I braced myself for the possibility of hearing more sarcastic remarks or demands to change the doctor. But instead, Shane nodded with respect and slowly began to speak. "I heard you've been researching my daughter's illness. You must have realized that the girl you are treating is my daughter. Indeed, I knew from her medical records that Shane was her father. But that didn't matter to me. If someone is in need right in front of me, I will lend a hand. That's all there is to it, I said with a smile. Tears welled up in Shane's eyes. I regret what I did to you. I know an apology isn't enough, so feel free to resent me as much as you want. I originally came from this remote island's branch and was promoted to section chief at the headquarters. At that time, I was overwhelmed with my daughter's illness and focused solely on securing my position. After you left, Jessica told me that no one would follow me if I continued like that. I was surprised that the once timid Jessica had said something like that. Jessica had been burdened by guilt over my transfer, believing it was her fault. She had tried to negotiate with upper management to bring me back and had confronted Shane with her opinions. This gave her confidence, and now she could express her views. Shane had since stepped down from his position at the headquarters and returned to this branch. Is that okay? What's the point of earning lots of money if I can't be there for my daughter when she needs me? Rachel told me about her father's situation, Shane said with a melancholic smile. Hearing him speak this way, I saw a reflection of my past self, who couldn't empathize with others because I was too focused on my struggles. It made me realize that Shane was also a troubled human being. Without saying more, Shane placed his hand over his heart and said, "Please take care of my daughter," before entering the hospital room. I don't believe that everyone can always understand each other, and I know that once tangled threads can't easily be untangled. But if we don't forget to respect one another, understanding is possible. I realized that acknowledging others while recognizing oneself is the best way to bridge the gap between us.